How did old Hollywood actresses' fame lift them up, and sometimes let them down? For every legend who remained in the spotlight, there are those who suddenly vanished, sometimes by scandal, sometimes by choice, sometimes swallowed by the ever-changing tides of fame. Today, we're taking a journey through Tinseltown's golden age, counting down 16 old Hollywood actresses who fell off the map. Where did they go? What made them leave it all behind? We're going deep into their stories. Number 16. Clara Bo. Once dubbed the It Girl, Clara Bo became the embodiment of the Roaring Twenties, a face that symbolized youthful rebellion, energy, and undeniable sex appeal. Bo's rise to fame was meteoric. She was cast in dozens of films, often playing the plucky, independent heroine that captivated moviegoers. With her expressive eyes and lively presence, she stood out in the silent era, making her a household name nearly overnight. But Hollywood's love affair with Bo was not always kind. While audiences adored her, the relentless press and studio system demanded more than any young woman could give. Every romance, every misstep, became front-page news. Bo's personal struggles intensified when talkies arrived, with critics unfairly targeting her Brooklyn accent and unrefined manner. Yet, the true cause of her disappearance wasn't the arrival of sound, but rather a web of betrayals and the crushing toll of constant scrutiny. In 1931, at just 26, she suffered a breakdown and retreated from public life, finding solace on a Nevada ranch with her husband, Rex Bell. There, she sought normalcy, far from the endless demands of stardom. Fame had left deep scars. Clara struggled with anxiety, depression, and a lifelong fear of the spotlight. Despite her early exit, her legend only grew as film historians reevaluated her contributions to cinema. Unlike so many, Bo never attempted a comeback. She spent her later years quietly, her extraordinary story a testament to both the intoxicating heights and harsh realities of early stardom. When Clara Bo left Hollywood, she truly vanished. Her legacy preserved not through scandal, but in the luminous films she left behind. Number 15. Norma Shearer. Norma Shearer was the queen of the MGM lot, and for good reason. She combined undeniable beauty with a rare talent for reinvention. Born in Canada, Shearer arrived in Hollywood in the early 1920s, quickly distinguishing herself with a steely determination. By the late 1920s and early 1930s, she was the ultimate leading lady, starring in films that pushed boundaries on what women could be on screen. Powerful, independent, and sexually liberated. Her roles in The Divorcee and A Free Soul weren't just box office smashes. They made her a symbol of modern womanhood in a changing world. Off-screen, her marriage to MGM's production head Irving Thalberg secured her a rare degree of creative control, an enviable position at a time when studios ruled with iron fists. But Shearer's fairy tale life took a turn in 1936 when Thalberg died suddenly. For the first time, she faced Hollywood on her own, while she managed to continue working for several more years, taking on roles in Marie Antoinette and The Women. The tide of fame was shifting. New stars were rising. The industry's appetite for the pre-code glamour Shearer personified was fading, and the old studio alliances that had protected her were dissolving. In 1942, at the peak of her talent and beauty, Shearer quietly walked away. Unlike some contemporaries, she didn't attempt a desperate comeback, instead enjoying a peaceful, private life away from the cameras. Fame had been generous, but Shearer had the wisdom to know when to step aside. For decades, she kept her distance from the industry, refusing most interviews and rarely making public appearances. Today, Norma Shearer is remembered as both a trailblazer and a mystery, a woman who knew how to make an exit just as well as she'd made an entrance. Number 14. Mabel Normand. One of Hollywood's earliest female powerhouses, Mabel Normand was not just an actress. She was a writer, director, and producer at a time when few women held creative control. Known for her vivacious spirit and mastery of slapstick, she starred alongside Charlie Chaplin and Fatty Arbuckle, earning audiences' laughter and affection with every pratfall and pie in the face. Behind the scenes, though, Norman's life was as chaotic as any comedy. Her success was soon overshadowed by personal struggles and scandals that were as sensational as her movies. She was linked to multiple Hollywood tragedies: the Fatty Arbuckle scandal, the still unsolved murder of director William Desmond Taylor, and a shooting involving her chauffeur. While none of these were her fault, the constant cloud of suspicion drove away job offers and audiences. At a time when morality crusaders were pushing for stricter censorship, Normand became a casualty of changing tastes and a less forgiving industry. Her health began to fail, and in 1926, she appeared in her final film. She died of tuberculosis only 4 years later, at age 37. Despite her untimely end, Normand's impact lingered. She shattered stereotypes, proved that women could be both funny and powerful, and opened doors for generations of female comedians. Her story is one of laughter and loss, a reminder of how quickly Hollywood can turn on those it once celebrated, and how fame can sometimes be both a blessing and a curse. Number 13. Frances Farmer. Frances Farmer's story is perhaps one of Hollywood's most tragic and misunderstood. Discovered at a young age for her extraordinary beauty and intensity, she quickly found herself starring in major films throughout the late 1930s and early 1940s. Farmer was fiercely independent, often clashing with studio heads over the shallow roles she was offered. She craved substance and artistry, which led her to split her time between the silver screen and the theater. But Hollywood's relentless pressures, paired with her own struggles with mental health and substance use, created a perfect storm. After a series of public breakdowns, Farmer was institutionalized, her fate sensationalized by the press and misunderstood by the public. For years, she was in and out of hospitals, often against her will, and under the strict control of her mother, who became her conservator. There were rumors, never fully substantiated, of abusive treatment and even a lobotomy, which cast a long shadow over her legacy. After her release, Farmer made a few attempts to return to acting, appearing in regional theater and television, but she never regained her former glory. The roles offered to her were often minor, a painful reminder of what had been lost. In her later years, Farmer moved to Indianapolis, living quietly until her death in 1970 from cancer. Fame had first lifted her up and then crushed her, but her story was eventually reclaimed in popular culture, notably with Jessica Lange's portrayal of her in the biopic Frances. Today, she is seen as a symbol of both Hollywood's cruelty and the resilience of the human spirit, a cautionary tale of what can happen when ambition meets the darker side of celebrity. Number 12. Gloria Swanson. Few stars have experienced the dizzying heights and perilous drops of Hollywood like Gloria Swanson. In the 1920s, Swanson was the absolute epitome of movie stardom, glamorous, imperious, and instantly recognizable. She was a master of reinvention, effortlessly transitioning from slapstick comedies to sweeping romantic dramas. Her elaborate costumes and dramatic screen presence made her a favorite of directors and fans alike. But as talkies took over, Swanson's lush, silent film style fell out of fashion. Offers dwindled, and by the 1930s, she had all but disappeared from movies. Never one to accept defeat, Swanson dabbled in stage acting, radio, and even business, exploring ventures from cosmetics to health food. But it was her extraordinary comeback as Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard that immortalized her. In the film, Swanson played a faded silent film star, aching for one last close-up, a character uncannily like herself. The performance was both a triumph and a bittersweet reflection on her own career. While Sunset Boulevard reignited interest in Swanson, she never fully recaptured her earlier stature. The industry had changed, and she was happy to leave the scramble for roles to others. Swanson spent her later years as an outspoken advocate for health, writing books and giving interviews with the same wit that once made her a star. She attended film festivals and basked in her status as a living legend, but always on her own terms. Gloria Swanson's story is not just one of fading fame. It's a testament to perseverance, reinvention, and the understanding that real greatness is never truly forgotten. Number 11. Louisa Rener. Louise Rener's Hollywood journey was as intense as it was brief. After being discovered in Europe and brought to MGM, she made a huge splash in American cinema, winning back-to-back Oscars for The Great Ziegfeld and The Good Earth, a feat unprecedented at the time. Critics and fans alike saw her as a potential successor to Greta Garbo, her haunting beauty and emotional depth setting her apart in an industry driven by glamour and surface charm. But Rener found the spotlight stifling. She struggled with English and with the rigid control that studios imposed on their stars, longing for more meaningful, complex roles. The sudden death of her friend and studio advocate, Irving Thalberg, marked a turning point. The projects offered to her began to disappoint, and she chafed under a system that valued her more for her looks than her craft. Disenchanted, Rener left Hollywood in 1938, barely 3 years after her double Oscar triumph. She returned to Europe, occasionally taking roles on stage and in small films, but largely content to leave fame behind. Rener's decision baffled many. Why would anyone abandon the pinnacle of success? For her, the answer was simple. She valued her happiness and peace of mind more than any statue. In her later years, Rener re-emerged as a charming and insightful presence at film festivals and award ceremonies, living to be over a century old. She spoke candidly about her Hollywood years, offering rare insight into the costs of stardom. Louisa Rener's story is a reminder that, sometimes, walking away is the greatest triumph of all. Number 10. Tippi Hedin. Few Hollywood stories are as suspenseful as that of Tippi Hedin. Plucked from obscurity by the legendary Alfred Hitchcock after he saw her in a television commercial, Hedin was transformed overnight into a star with roles in The Birds and Marnie. But the attention she received from Hitchcock turned dark. His obsession with her became legendary, culminating in unwanted advances and attempts to control her personal and professional life. When Hedin rejected him, Hitchcock used his power to block her from working with other directors, effectively stalling her career at its peak. Despite this, Hedin remained resilient. She continued to take roles, though mostly in lower-budget films and television, never again achieving the star status her talent deserved. Fame, for Hedin, was a double-edged sword, bringing both opportunities and trauma. Rather than letting Hollywood define her, she carved out a new path, becoming an animal rights activist and founding the Shambhala Preserve, a sanctuary for big cats and other exotic animals. She raised her daughter, Melanie Griffith, who would later become a star in her own right. In later years, Hedin spoke openly about her experiences with Hitchcock, becoming a vocal advocate for women's rights and industry reform. Though she never returned to the A-list, her courage, grace, and activism left an impact that far exceeded any box office return. Number 9. Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple is synonymous with child stardom. With her golden curls and infectious charm, she danced and sang her way into the hearts of Depression-era audiences, becoming Hollywood's top box office draw at the astonishingly young age of 6. But the fairy tale couldn't last forever. As Temple grew older, she struggled to transition from child to adult roles. Hollywood wasn't interested in her as a teenager, and she found herself typecast and out of step with the new era of film. Rather than clinging to fading fame, Temple gracefully retired from movies at 22. But her story was just beginning. After marrying and raising a family, she re-emerged as Shirley Temple Black, embarking on a highly respected career in public service. She served as the U.S. ambassador to Ghana and later Czechoslovakia, earning widespread respect for her diplomatic skills and dedication to her country. Temple never turned her back on her Hollywood past, but she also didn't let it define her. She made occasional TV appearances, wrote her memoirs, and became a role model for child actors everywhere, proving that life after fame could be rich and meaningful. She remained a beloved public figure until her passing, admired for both her on-screen innocence and her real-life resilience. Number 8. Hedi Lamar. Hedi Lamar was a rare combination of brains and beauty, a glamorous starlet with an inventor's mind. In the 1930s and 40s, Lamar's striking looks made her a favorite for dramatic and exotic roles, but she was never satisfied with just being a screen siren. Off-screen, Lamar co-invented a frequency-hopping radio guidance system during World War II, a technology that would lay the groundwork for modern Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Yet, in Hollywood, her intellect was rarely acknowledged. By the late 1950s, Lamar's film career had faded. She became increasingly protective of her image, sometimes taking legal action against those she believed were exploiting her fame. Fame had been both a shield and a cage, granting her opportunities and, at the same time, setting limits she could never break. In her final decades, Lamar withdrew from the public eye, living in seclusion and communicating with friends mostly by phone. It wasn't until after her death that her scientific legacy was fully celebrated, with Hedi posthumously inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. Today, Lamar is remembered as much for her contributions to technology as for her classic films, a reminder that true genius isn't always recognized in its own time. Number 7. Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo was a true enigma. Her beauty and mystery entranced audiences around the globe. After arriving in Hollywood from Sweden, she quickly became one of the biggest stars of the silent and early sound eras. Her haunting performances in Anna Karenina and Camille, earning her a legendary reputation. Garbo's allure was as much about what she concealed as what she revealed. She fiercely guarded her privacy, rarely giving interviews and shunning the Hollywood social scene. But when her final film, Two-Faced Woman, flopped in 1941, Garbo did something almost unheard of. She walked away from fame at the very peak of her powers. She never returned to the screen, never made a desperate attempt at a comeback, and never granted tell-all interviews. Instead, Garbo lived quietly in New York City, traveling, reading, and enjoying a private life shielded from the press and fans. Garbo's decision only enhanced her legend, making her the gold standard for the mysterious, unattainable movie star. Even decades after her retirement, she continued to fascinate film historians and audiences alike. Greta Garbo proved that sometimes the most powerful statement a star can make is knowing when to disappear and letting the world remember you as you once were. Number 6. Mae West. If Hollywood had a queen of double entendre, it was Mae West. Her razor-sharp wit and no-nonsense attitude made her a sensation during the 1930s and 40s. Not only was West a star, but she also wrote much of her own material, packing her films with innuendo and groundbreaking sexual frankness. As censorship in Hollywood increased, West's brash style fell out of favor with studio heads, who found her too provocative for the new, sanitized era. Undeterred, West reinvented herself as a nightclub performer and author, writing novels and penning a celebrated autobiography. She made occasional attempts at a film comeback, including the cult classic Myra Breckinridge and her last film, Sextet. But neither recaptured the magic of her early days. Fame, for West, was always on her own terms. She continued to live grandly, surrounding herself with young admirers and holding court in her lavish apartment. Her later years were spent enjoying the perks of celebrity, even as the industry moved on without her. West remained unapologetic, witty, and fearless to the end, a symbol of liberation for generations of performers to come. She's remembered as the woman who taught Hollywood how to have fun, and who refused to be tamed by anyone. Number 5. Louise Brooks. Louise Brooks was the ultimate iconoclast. With her blunt bob haircut and modern sensibility, she set trends that lasted far beyond her own brief career. Best known for the silent classics Pandora's Box and Diary of a Lost Girl, Brooks was fearless on screen, and even more so off it, walking away from lucrative studio contracts when she felt they limited her creativity. Her refusal to play by Hollywood's rules cost her dearly. Brooks found work in Europe, but upon her return to the U.S., discovered she had been all but blacklisted. In the decades that followed, she struggled financially, working as a radio actor, store clerk, and even a dancer. For many years, it seemed her legacy would be lost, a casualty of a fickle industry. But as film scholars rediscovered her work, Brooks was vindicated. Her writings about Hollywood became essential reading, celebrated for their candor and insight. She never made a major screen comeback, but in her later years, Brooks was hailed as a visionary. Her films and persona finally given the recognition they deserved. Today, she stands as a symbol of artistic integrity and enduring style, proof that sometimes the world catches up with the trailblazers, just a little late. Number 4. Anne Dvorak. Anne Dvorak's Hollywood journey was a study in both promise and disappointment. Bursting onto the scene in the early 1930s, she earned acclaim for her intense, deeply felt performances in films like Scarface and Three on a Match. But the fiercely independent Dvorak clashed with the studio system almost from the start. Her decision to marry actor Leslie Fenton against the wishes of Warner Brothers led to an unofficial blacklisting, an unspoken ban that limited her opportunities for years. Dvorak spent much of the 1940s and 50s taking whatever roles she could find, moving between B-movies and overseas productions. Eventually, she left the industry entirely, living in England and then Hawaii, far from the Hollywood glare. Unlike some stars, Dvorak never sought a high-profile comeback. She was content to live out of the spotlight, pursuing personal happiness rather than public acclaim. Her later years were spent in obscurity, but fans and film historians slowly began to champion her overlooked body of work. In recent decades, retrospectives and restorations have introduced Dvorak to new generations, and her story serves as both a cautionary tale and a quiet triumph. Proof that even if Hollywood forgets, real talent can never be erased. Number 3. Diane Varscy. Diane Varscy's career began with a bang and ended almost as suddenly. After a breakout performance in Peyton Place, which earned her an Oscar nomination, she seemed destined for superstardom. Yet Varscy found the pressures of Hollywood overwhelming and the roles uninspiring. She longed for a life of creativity and introspection, not the constant demands of studios and the press. After only a handful of films, Varscy left Los Angeles to study poetry and pursue a quieter, more thoughtful existence. She later explained that she felt like an outsider in Hollywood, never truly at home in its competitive, superficial culture. Varscy returned to acting in the 1970s, but her screen presence was more subdued, reflecting her new priorities. Her departure was a shock to many, but Varscy's honesty about her struggles inspired others to prioritize their mental and emotional well-being. She wrote poetry, taught classes, and quietly influenced a generation of artists. Diane Varscy's journey is a poignant reminder that fame is not always the answer, and that sometimes stepping back is the bravest act of all. Number 2. Priscilla Lane. Priscilla Lane was the embodiment of Hollywood's wholesome girl next door. With sparkling eyes and a knack for both comedy and drama, she quickly became a favorite of directors and audiences alike, appearing in hits like Arsenic and Old Lace, and Hitchcock's Saboteur. But unlike many of her contemporaries, Lane chose to leave Hollywood at the height of her popularity. After marrying in 1942, she focused on building a family, moving away from the relentless demands of stardom. For Lane, fame was a chapter, not a lifelong identity. She made only a few sporadic returns to acting, but for the most part, she was content to enjoy the joys and challenges of ordinary life. Lane's story is rare in that it lacks the drama of scandal or tragedy. She simply walked away, satisfied with what she had accomplished and eager for new adventures. In her later years, Lane lived quietly on the East Coast, far from the glare of cameras. She rarely gave interviews or attended Hollywood reunions, instead finding fulfillment in her role as a wife and mother. While her films continue to delight classic movie fans, Lane's legacy is a testament to the power of choice and the courage it takes to leave the stage on your own terms. Number 1. Jane Russell. With her sultry looks, bold attitude, and unforgettable performances, Jane Russell was one of Hollywood's original bombshells. Her breakout role in Howard Hughes's controversial The Outlaw put her on the map, and films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes cemented her status as a major star. Russell was never just a pretty face. Her talent, wit, and independence made her stand out in an industry often driven by conformity. But as the film industry changed in the late 1950s and 60s, Russell found herself with fewer opportunities. Rather than fading quietly, she reinvented herself, taking to the stage and television, and even recording gospel music. Fame had given her freedom, but it also demanded adaptability. Russell embraced her place as an icon, enjoying the perks of celebrity, while also giving back through charity work. In her later years, Russell was a regular at classic film festivals and Hollywood retrospectives, happily sharing stories from the Golden Age. She never made a full-scale screen comeback, but she never truly disappeared either. Jane Russell's story is proof that, for some, the spotlight is more than just a stage. It's a legacy, passed from generation to generation, as bold and unforgettable as the woman herself. Each of these women left an indelible mark on Hollywood's golden age. Some vanished by choice, others were pushed out, and a few simply grew tired of the spotlight. But whether by scandal, self-discovery, or the inevitable march of time, their legacies endure. Which of these stars do you miss most? Did we leave out one of your favorites? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the drama, glamour, and unforgettable stories of the silver screen.